genre.
Welcome to Beyond Geek By Night, where we go behind the scenes of the Geek By Night podcast. On today's show, we will be discussing the 43rd episode, Playing the Game. So pour one out for our buddy Sean, because we're about to go beyond Geek By Night. I'm your host, Matt Bennett. I'm joined today, as always, by writer and creator Scott Carelli.
Hi.
Writer and director of Playing the Game, Cass Fredrickson.
Hello.
Voice of Victor Conrad, Jay Malone.
Hello.
And voice of both the Ire and the Last Man, Mark Allen Jr.
Hello.
Welcome, everybody. On the 43rd episode of Geek By Night, Playing the Game, our heroes venture into the game to spread a virus by playing through all 3 levels. I've also been notified by our lawyers that I'm not legally allowed to say whether or not the game spawned from Elliot Markowitz and Jeff Gibson's creation we saw in the very first episode. While the team braves the elements, survival mode, and finally a 5-headed dragon, Lorelei and the Underachievers make their way to Billy's warehouse only to find thousands of clones of Victor Conrad. These clones, which possess all powers granted by the Origin Particle, are dubbed the Alpha Dogs. Once the underdogs successfully beat the game, they return to McKinney City to find it under attack by the Alpha Dogs, who have been sicked upon the city by Billy. Finally, the Last Man decides to set his fallback plan into action and destroy the grid, as well as the entire city, before fatally shooting his past self, the Ire. The stage has been set. Only one more episode after this. All right.
The show is so weird.
Can you imagine just jumping in on this part and hearing the summary?
Wow.
Just get up to speed, kids. Everything's going to be fine. Just hop in.
This is very exciting. Penultimate episode. It is really happening. So, Jay, I'm going to pick on you first. I have not had you on Beyond Geek By Night for a little bit. So, what I've been doing with these last few episodes in the series is doing kind of a retrospective and talking to people about their time with Geek By Night as a whole. So to kick things off, I wanted to ask you, how are you feeling about the show reaching its conclusion and where the story has gone since the last time you were on, which was a few years ago? I believe it was in the introductory episode for Victor. It's been a little bit.
It has. It's been a minute. I think that the main feeling that I had when I kind of realized that things were wrapping up was, it wasn't sadness, but it was grief, because it was something that meant so much to me and still does, to be a part of just an unbelievable cast, and to be able to work with just such incredibly talented people was unbelievably rewarding for me. And I mean, I've said it before. When I got cast, was legitimately a life-changing experience for me, because it was always something I'd wanted to do. I'd always wanted to get back into acting. I was a stage actor when I was in high school, and I just never believed in myself enough to do it. And I don't even remember how I saw that you guys were looking for folks for the show, but I'm thankful I did. And I think I had read for Jeff originally, because I was like, oh, a little funny. All right, I like that. I can go with that. And then when you got back to me and you said, yeah, we want you to read for this guy instead, I was like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's a callback. I'll take that. That's great. And finding that it was, a character named Victor. My son's name is Victor. It was kind of serendipitous. It was just, it was an unbelievable experience. And while there is grief that it's ending, I'm so thankful that it happened. And see, Victor's a great character. He's such a fun character to play. It's so very different than my normal personality, but to play a character that has the kind of gravitas that he does, was really fun, because it's so outside of my normal wheelhouse, but it was cool.
So, without giving away any finale secrets, because we do still have one episode left, how do you feel about Victor's character journey so far through playing the game where we see the Alpha Dogs for the first time?
I love it. It felt very natural. I loved being able to get in on the action a little bit in this episode, and having him kind of show up and being able to deliver some really funny lines was nice, because Victor's kind of the straight man a lot of times, and to be able to have a couple of one-liners here and there was really nice. And I mean, it's epic, like it's this huge fantastical clash. It was just cool to be a part of.
So, Mark, I have not had you on Beyond Geek by Night for a while. Actually, not since Under the Bridge, when the Ire was first introduced. So, looking at the series as it's starting to wrap up here, how are you feeling about the show reaching its end, and where the story has gone since we first met the Ire in Under the Bridge?
It's wild. I actually, before this, I looked up when I was cast as the Ire, and it was in August of 2014 or 2015. So I've been the Ire for 9 years, which is half of my voiceover career. And so it's wild to be here. It's wild to be getting to this point, both in the overall story as well as the story for the Ire. Because quite frankly, after Under the Bridge and that whole arc, I didn't know that I would be coming back. It was a surprise for me as well when the Ire returned. So, it's the overall journey has been an incredible experience, both as a performer and just as a fan of the show in general, because my goodness, we've done a lot.
And obviously now in these episodes that are wrapping up the series, you're not just playing the Ire, you're playing the Last Man as well.
Yeah, the secret's out now.
And I was actually somebody who we were talking about it in Beyond that I did not know that you were Gene Marks. That was just the pseudonym that we put in.
By design.
The secret was well kept.
Yeah, a lot of that I'll give credit to Scott on that one, because it really was sort of like, how people are. I mean, if they're gonna know it's me, then they're gonna know it's the same character, right? Like, so yeah, genius planning on that part.
Obviously there's some post-processing and stuff on the Last Man's voice, but he has a really distinct personality and feel compared to his present day self, the Ire. What is your process for portraying the Last Man versus the Ire, and who do you have more fun playing?
Oh man, so it's a long process that starts from the Ire, because when we were working on the Ire, my whole idea was, what does a self-important, very entitled, toxic gamer sound like, right? That was sort of the whole basis of his character, long before his ambition to do much of anything else. That's where his character is rooted in. And so from that jumping off point, as the Ire's sort of ambitions grew, and his plans became more complex, I've always had to kind of come back to that point of like, he's expecting a reward that he believes he is due, that he has done nothing to achieve. That's kind of been his whole impetus, right? So when going from that point to The Last Man, it was like, okay, well, what if that moment happened where the Ire finally realized the world doesn't owe him anything? If he wants something, he has to do it himself, and he has to go and get it. And so performance-wise, even before the voice, I knew I needed to take him into a place where now, instead of just being entitled, he becomes self-important. He instead of being the toxic gamer, he becomes the toxic white knight, where he feels like he's the only person who can save the world. anyone else's ideas or plans aren't going to do it. It's got to be him. He's the only one who can do it. So just on the performance alone, that's where they kind of differ. And it's really entitlement versus this mission of like, no one else can do it. I have to do it. It's up to me. And how far you can take that to a point where it does become that toxic ideal and you sort of self-appoint yourself as the savior. And then when it comes to the voice, again, a lot of credit goes to Scott on that one. I remember when we were workshopping The Last Man, I actually gave, I think, 3 different options. And one was essentially the Ire putting on what he thought was a tough guy voice. One was my best impression of oh no, I'm blanking on his name. Rorschach from The Watchmen. And then the third option was sort of a blend of the two, which is what we kind of ended up going with. And so it's that chesty kind of throaty voice of like, I'm so cool and badass and important. That it's a lot of fun to be able to do that because that's an area of my vocal range I don't get to stretch very often. And when coupled with, honestly, a very complex character, the idea of like, I used to be this entitled brat and then the world went to hell and I grew up and I learned that I had to fend for myself and no one was trying to fix what I saw was the problem. So I took it upon myself to do that. I will say, I think I have more fun as a creator, as a performer, playing The Last Man, just because it is a little bit more complex. But I do still have a soft spot for the Ire, because he's just a little bastard, and it's a lot of fun sometimes to be mean to people. I don't know.
So, Scott and Cass, I want to talk to you about the Ire as a character. Where did you get the idea of the Ire and the Last Man, sort of coming together? Where did that come from? And was one killing the other always in the plan?
You mean like working together?
Yeah.
I think we built that into when we first introduced the Last Man. Like, I feel like I don't know. I feel like I don't know that them working together was our ultimate goal, but I think we knew going in that like the Last Man was the Ire. It was a really long time ago. It was like over 3 years ago now when we were writing those. So.
The way that I remember it is that we always knew that the Ire was the sort of like end game, was like one of the end game players in the finale. And I think, we had always felt that like, oh yeah, like clearly the Ire, and that's like what that post-credit scene at the end of season 2 was about. It was like teeing up that like, oh yeah, you thought we forgot about this guy? He's coming back. Get ready.
Right.
But I don't think at that point, we were just thinking in terms of the sort of like grand machinations of the finale and lining everything up toward that direction. We didn't even know the Last Man was going to be a thing for a while. Because I remember we went down that other avenue with the other alternate universe where it was like a little too like James Cameron and and I don't remember the Last Man being a part of that. I feel like the Last Man just sort of like replaced that entire like Rebel Alliance or whatever. Right. He's like a one-man Rebel Alliance. And when we realized that he was going to be the Ire, I think that we just thought like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to end this arc by like bringing back that scene that was the post-credit scene of season 2, only now showing like what happened 30 seconds later with this new context. I feel like it kind of like them working together grew organically. And then I think that the Last Man killing the Ire, I feel like I remember when that came up as we were breaking this, like the idea of that being a thing. And it just felt so juicy and it felt like such a simple solution to like simplify, of like, well, there's two of these guys. Like, we should kill one, and the more shocking one, and the one that would clearly kill the other, would be the more mature one,
Right.
killing the annoying one. So, yeah, I think that's how it happened. It just sort of like evolved, and then we ended up there. But I don't think it was the plan for the ire to be at the end of the show, to be part of the very, very end, the series finale. We always knew. We did not know that it was going to be this version of the ire.
Looking back at the series, between the monorail, Robot Simon, the avatars in the game, the return of the warehouse from the opening scene of season 2, where the overachievers were framed by Billy and arrested, there have been a lot of callbacks in these final episodes. How many of these were set up intentionally and built toward versus just kind of finding uses for them along the way and fitting them in?
I remember when we were breaking this finale, because Scott and Nick broke the two-parter, the opening two-parter from last season, where they have like the train heist and everything. And so we were talking about everything that we needed to wrap up, and neither of them could remember what was in the train car that got stolen. So we were like, a lot of our like our mental energy was like, okay, how do we call back to this, and how do we like make it so that like it pays off, because we set it up and then like we never touched it again because the rest of the season happened. But so that one wasn't, and I honestly don't know, because I wasn't part of the initial planning for the train heist, so I don't know what was in the thing. But we I don't know, I feel like we stuck that landing. I don't know, it's kind of like it's both like reverse engineering and like we're setting this up on purpose. You know, it's kind of like a mix of those two things.
Yeah, and it's also just like, I don't know, like there were definitely some things that were set up purposefully to use later, to call back to later. But like, yeah, there was a lot of things that we were just doing because at the time we were like, oh, this would be an interesting thing, or
oh, this sounds cool.
Yeah,
Like...
this sounds cool. And then as we're, you know, taking this thing in for a landing, we're, rather than trying to pull in new things, it feels more apt to like look behind us and see what things we have already that we can use, and turn things that weren't necessarily meant to be setups into setups that were paying off.
Yes.
And yeah. So yeah, it's a mix. It's definitely a mix, but it's definitely like not, they weren't all setups from the beginning, but I think we came into this last batch of episodes like really wanting to make it feel like everything had a point and a purpose.
Was all leading somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott, I've got to ask, you know, there's a huge connection between this episode and the beginning of the series in Reboot, because we return to the game, and not just return to the game, but most of our characters return as the characters that they were playing in Reboot. Did you ever imagine, did you have any idea when you were originally writing Reboot that you'd be able to revisit it in this way?
I will say, not only could I imagine it, but I couldn't stop imagining it and wouldn't let it go.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. It was kind of always the plan. It didn't quite turn out the way that I think we had originally discussed how it would turn out. In terms of like the way that we would literalize the game that they were playing in that first episode. But it turned out great. And yeah, I was like, we've been talking about this thing, and we've been hinting at it since season 2, and even before that, which, you know, I'll get to that in a second, but like hunting on it for so long. I literally took a stand during one of our writers' meetings where it was like, we absolutely cannot not play the game. Like, they have to do it. Like, they have to.
I think I remember asking you, like, does this need to happen? Because we have like a laundry list of like everything that we need to resolve in the finale, and I'm like, do we have time to do it? And he's like, we're gonna make the time.
Yeah. So I made sure that we did it. But yeah, it was the idea of them playing their characters from the game. It's been set up, I mean, since season 1. It is how Billy was manipulating Max to buy all of the real estate. That was ultimately going to lead to like the whole city becoming one giant game. And we ended up eating that concept's lunch with the World of Tomorrow arc. And so we were like, well, okay, well, we can't do that. So we got to figure out another way to make that work. And I think at that point, it's like, well, we have the game. So like if they go in there, but then, well, if they just go in and play a game, like who cares? Like that's not anything. And then that's where the Kruger patch came from, and to add some stakes. And then suddenly everything was starting to roll together into like one story. And we were like, holy shit, we didn't mean to do this, but this is really working out. Like it was, I remember the day that we all figured that out, and it was like, we were all like, holy shit, we really did this. Like we really, most of this was an accident, but it really worked out.
So even though we are at the end of the series here, we're still introducing new plot points and new enemies and stuff like that, not the least of which is the alpha dogs. So we have the overachievers, we have the watchdogs, we have the alpha dogs. Scott and Cass, where do these evil underdog teams keep coming from? And what is it about pitting the underdogs against other teams or even other versions of themselves that is so compelling to you as writers?
Scott names them all, I'm pretty sure. And because like they're the underdogs, so like how do we play on this?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have like the overachievers, and then we have, I don't know, it makes sense to me. I like the trope of like we're fighting ourselves, because it's like a good metaphor, for like growth. And I feel like growth is like really the name of the game, especially in this final season. So it just makes sense. Because they're a team. Like we started out with like the more individual focused episodes, but like as we kind of grew into this more like ensemble focused show, like it made sense for the team to go up against another team,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's so funny because I the whole like concept of the overachievers was like, oh, we should build toward something. It was kind of like an anti-Avengers
Right.
for, the whole first season. And with like Charlie being the Nick Fury, which is just so funny in retrospect. But it's been so like we that was always the intention there with the overachievers, and it was just like this dumb pun of like underdogs, overachievers, I don't know. And then when we went to this alternate future, and we had the evil versions of them, I don't remember if that was just us like just thinking like, oh, that would be a cool thing to do, or was it we were trying to like set, I believe the intention there was like, again, like that, like we were saying earlier about like using stuff that we had previously set up or established. It was like, well, last season we established that Simon was a clone, so maybe we should use that. And then now in the penultimate episode we're using it again. And, I just like the idea of Victor's face, sort of becoming this representation of this like horrible, like fascist thing, because it's so the opposite of him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I don't know, there was just something kind of juicy thematically there that I liked. And yeah, it just sort of, and it like it's so funny because it's like it goes from an evil team of like of other underdogs that are not, they're just like these other people, and they're just a real like weird, just sort of like thrown together group of people like the underdogs are, to literal evil versions of the underdogs that are just like copies, to just one guy a bunch of times. So it just like funnels down, which is I don't know, it's just an interesting structure, I guess, as well. But yeah, I don't know, it's just been I don't know why we kept going back to that theme, but it just kept kind of happening, and it felt this was like an easy way to solve the problem of like finding more people to cast. It was like, well, we could just give our current actors new stuff to do. That's fun.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Jay, we have sweet, strong, compassionate Victor, who has been cloned into this army of alpha dogs.
Yeah.
How did you feel initially reading this in the script? And did you enjoy getting to play Victor in this new light?
I was excited because it was nothing I've ever done before. Like, even when I was, back when I was acting when I was younger, I was always kind of the happy-go-lucky character. Like, I think the closest thing I got to evil Victor was playing Charlie Brown. it was, decidedly not evil, but not happy-go-lucky. You know what I mean? So getting to play Victor turned up to like way past 11, and just taking that, looking at it and being like, okay, if you stripped him bare of everything that makes Victor Victor, at his core, he is a military man. And he is going to follow orders, and he's going to follow orders effectively because he is essentially a super soldier. He is exactly what you would want him to be if you were trying to create the perfect soldier. So getting to kind of sink my teeth into that side of not necessarily Victor, but that version of Victor, kind of like the mirror universe Victor, was really, really fun, and kind of gross at times, because it was like, oh, that's not my Victor. This isn't the guy I've been playing for years now. But it was satisfying to be able to do that, and the resolution that occurs down the road from where we're at is very satisfying, because there's some very impactful stuff coming up that you guys are going to love. You're absolutely going to love it.
So Scott, the sound design in this episode was extensive, especially for the action sequences that we see inside the game. Can you talk a little bit about how you approached the edit for this episode, and were there any video games that inspired this?
Oh, I would say video game wise, I don't know that there was any video games in particular, other than like, I don't know, like Legend of Zelda or something. But it was mostly like the Dungeons and Dragons thing, like turning that into a game to be played in a virtual environment, I guess. But in terms of the sound design, I don't know. It was, the three main like game sequences in this, not counting the tavern, but the actual like game sequences, they were tough to like get right, because I was so determined that we get into the game. If we're going to keep talking about this thing, we have to play it. That I remember like talking to Cass and Nick about this when we were breaking this, and just saying like, yeah, just write whatever and I'll figure it out. And I'm going to hate myself later, but like, I want this to be like as, purely imaginative as possible. Thankfully, like, I wrote myself that out of like Billy just being lazy and making a really kind of basic game. Because it was, a Trojan horse. But I just sort of like went into each sequence and just sort of like slowly but surely was like, okay, what would this sound like? And then would find sounds I could combine that would make that thing. And just kept going all the way through that. And then sometimes it would just be like, finding sounds, or like purchasing sounds off of like, sound effect websites that were like, generic video game sounds that made me laugh. Given the context, I think you guys know which one I'm talking about. But yeah, I remember, Cass, you played that, you listened to that for the first time when I was done with that scene, and you like lost it at the death of Sean. Yeah.
So
the Sean scene.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I just had a lot of fun, and it was a lot of trial and error and trying to figure out. I know that it was also hard, like in the second sequence, when you have the diamond Gatling cannon and the pixies. The pixies were that took me like 4 hours to put together because I wanted them to sound very specific. And I wanted the sound of them, like their little like explosions, to sound very specific. And so like I just like tediously designed that. The pixie noises are like all me, and then they're like all like messed with like in post to make me sound like a pixie and just like overlapping and everything. But I wanted them to sound very specific, and so I just did it myself. But yeah. And that was also an interesting conversation, those sequences with Tofty, because there were so many, like, I knew that because there was no visuals, the music was going to be so important to paint the picture of what was happening and make you feel the emotion you're supposed to be feeling, like uh-oh, or like oh no, what are they going to do now? Like just or whoa, that sucks, or that was a close one. All of that stuff you're going to feel through the music. And so it was like a really delicate balancing act with finding all of those moments and timing them out with Tofty to make sure that they were mixing well with the sound effects, so that the music wasn't like overbearing on the sound effects in the mix, and where you would kind of get lost, because that was happening a few times. This one was like those three sequences. There was a lot of back and forth between me and Tofty about like timing, like very specific timing on stuff. It was tough. Cause like typically I'm like sending score as I get it to Cass, but this time I was like, this episode's never going to come out if I do that.
Yeah.
So I just had to like roll up my sleeves and kind of be the music supervisor on this one, and just we did our notes, our score notes, and I just used those, and worked with Tofty on the timing of everything. So yeah, it was just a combination of all of that stuff, but it was very difficult. That all being said, it's nothing compared to what's coming up next. But it's but that's always the case with this show.
I'm laughing like I know. I'm the only one in the room who has no idea what's coming up.
Yeah, that's true. Oh man. Yeah.
So speaking of the death of Sean, who is played by the marvelous Sam Gash, that scene ended up kind of being the talk of the town when the episode came out on the Discord channel. Did it end up how you imagined when you originally wrote it in the script?
I think it's funnier, but I like that, not in like a mean-spirited way, but like it definitely, I think it ended up funnier than it read to me the first time, like looking at like the final draft of the script. Um, but I like that it both is, it's like funny but like also like heart-wrenching because like oh
Yeah.
my god, like that guy died, you know? And like we're giving it stakes in a way that feels, I don't know, it like feels correct for this show, for it to be like both horrifying and kind of funny.
Yeah, we wrote that in basically because we were like, if you die in the game, you die in real life promise, like we have to pay that off at least
Yeah.
once. And so poor Sean had to be sacrificed to the gods of narrative. But it was a noble sacrifice in the end, and it made a lot of people both very sad and very happy. So
Yes, definitely pouring out for poor Sean. Our the first of two major deaths in this episode. Obviously with the Ire meeting his demise at the end. Mark, what was your reaction to reading that in the script the first time through?
I was very surprised. I don't know that I saw it coming. I think when we first have that sort of introduction between the Last Man and the Ire, and it's revealed that they're the same person, that already had shocked me to the point where I went, oh, I didn't know we were going to actually like break the space-time continuum and have two Ires in the same place. I didn't know we were going there. So like everything after that has just been whipped cream on top of cake. Like it was such a joy. So I mean, maybe a little off topic, but like there's so few instances in any voice actor's career where they're playing two characters in the same scene. Let alone two characters who straight up talk to each other. And so I very much got into that sort of mindset of like treating each of them as a separate character that I was portraying and like trying to play off of the performance of the other me, if that doesn't sound unhinged enough. And so when it got to that point, I think the first time I saw that was in the cold read. And it just, I was like, I threw me out of my own kind of dry read performance at first when I was like, oh, I'm dead. Oh, very, very much surprised me. And literally after, because we end the episode with that and knowing how little is left, it's just sort of like, where do you go from there? Like we've kind of explored so many avenues of the Last Man and both his desperation and what he's willing to do to achieve his goals, that literally killing the only person who would know him as well as he does was not on the table as far as I was concerned. So once it happened, you're just kind of left going, wow, like what could possibly be coming next?
We've talked in previous after shows about some of the episodes we would call fondly cast specials, something like Into the Void, where you have like these very genuine, sincere character moments of different characters playing off each other. But playing the game is very different from that type of episode. This is a monumental story wrap-up type episode with a lot of plot and a lot of characters all interconnecting. So I want to ask you about the experience of directing this episode and, kind of putting all these moving pieces into place right before the series finale. What did you like most about putting together this episode as director?
Well, I'm actually I'm a big tabletop RPG person. And I like fantasy in general. So this was this is like the other, like one of my other special interests is this episode. And I was like really excited that I got to do something different that's like outside my like Geek by Night wheelhouse. Like we still do have the scene with like Joel and Charlie, like, talking and like getting to know each other better. But it was a lot of fun just in general, like building this like video game scape that were in for this episode. Less so like the sound of it, because that's like Scott's job, but like, like taking the like laying the groundwork for Scott's sound design, which is incredible. As far as my favorite scene, I think it's the one where Sam Gash as Sean shows up. Listening to those line reads was delightful. It was a highlight of the experience. And it just felt like different than what I normally do. So that in itself was fun.
So after writing together for a few years, alternating between directing and producing this show, Scott and Cass, are you able to look at individual scenes or ideas and be able to say like, oh, Nick wrote that or Cass thought of that? Or does it just kind of blend together as this three-way collaboration at this point?
As far as like ideas or concepts, no, like because the way that we like started breaking the stories was just like we're on Zoom for 3 hours and kind of like hashing it out like what we're doing. But as far as like specific lines or like bits of scripts, I know what I wrote,
Yeah, I don't always know for sure who wrote what, but I tend to have feelings just because like everybody has like a thing, I guess. I don't know. like Nick has a certain sense of humor that is very specific to him, and whenever it pops up in a script, I know that that's a Nick line.
Yeah.
It's stuff like that. But in general, I think we do a really great job of collaborating in a way where we're just sort of like, yes-anding everything. I mean, that's not strictly true, but once we're into the writing process, that's what it feels like. In the breaking process, that's a lot of dead ends. Some that I wish would come sooner than they do, but I think in general, like I tend to forget who does what. Cass is the one with the really great memory, and we're grateful to them for
Thanks.
being around to keep us on track. In general, like I just kind of look at it and I'm like, yeah, that feels like Geek by Night. That tends to be like would you say that tends to be like the kind of thing where it's like you're always coming to things from a character place, Nick comes to things all around, but I feel like, I mean, we all come at things like, we all have like everything, but we have like little specialties where like your thing is character, his tends to be like comedy and dialogue, and mine tends to be like big picture and like tone, I think.
Yeah.
And so like, I know like my big thing, the reason why I do like one of the last passes on the script is because I read it and I know what does and doesn't feel like Geek by Night. And can just like, no, that's not right. This needs to be changed or whatever. But I don't remember who wrote it. For all I know, I did. And now I'm correcting myself, like I don't know. It's until I'm in that mindset, I don't know. Yeah. So it's a mixed bag. There's some things I can tell who wrote them, but I think in general, no. But we know what our strengths are.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we have a listener question from Harley W. And Jay, I actually think you are the perfect person to ask this question to. And that is, in a die in the game, die in real life scenario, which video games would you be best at and worst at?
Can I just say all of them for worst at? As someone who loves to talk about games, I'm very bad at them. Let's see. Honestly, the worst would honestly probably be Tetris. I'm so bad at Tetris. I'm completely inept. And if it was something where it's like you have to get to level 10, I'd just be like, just pull the trigger. I'm done. It's not going to happen. Best would probably be Uncharted because it's very forgiving. Because Nate doesn't have a health meter; he has a luck meter until the luck runs out, and then you can just hide until it regenerates. So I'm very good at hiding. Very good at hiding. So yeah, worst would be Tetris. Best would probably be Uncharted, something like that, or Spider-Man. Like I can lose myself for hours just swinging around New York City in one of the Spider-Man games. So
for sure,
yeah,
awesome. And thanks for that question, Harley. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a great question.
So a major theme of Geek by Night is growth. I'm curious, Mark, do you think that the Ire grew or changed, or do you think he met his demise in this timeline just kind of being the same old dick we always know him as?
I think he grew into a larger dick. I cannot, and this is so, I usually play really sweet, caring types of characters, so it's so odd to have a character where I'm just like, this dude has no redeeming qualities. There's really, I can't think of an instance where he does anything other than for himself. Like, even at the very end, his like, whoa, hey, calm down, don't shoot me, what are you thinking? It's not about, both of our minds together will be able to stop the problem. It's, you can't kill me, that means I die. Like, that's not, you're not supposed to do that. So, from my perspective, and maybe Scott and Cass have different opinions, but as far as I can tell, by this point in the story, it's pretty cemented that the Ire is just an asshole. And essentially, he then becomes a stepping stone for the last man's growth, because he even says it himself, it's time I stop living in the past, so he kills the past version of himself so that he can keep moving forward and that he can grow. The Ire then just this entire time essentially has been an agent for everybody else to grow and become, the better version of themselves that they're supposed to be, which in and of itself is a superpower, honestly.
In previous episodes, we've mentioned storylines or scenes that were cut along the way. And now that we're reaching the end, I'd really like to hear from you, Scott and Cass. Are there any other cut stories or scenes or ideas that didn't make it into the final product that you'd like to share with the listeners?
There's a whole season of episodes that we broke.
Yeah.
That we soft broke. Back when the show wasn't going to season 2 wasn't going to be as serialized as it turned out to be. And then and then because we decided we really need to end the show. We really need to take the time to end the show 5 years from now. Things happen, but yeah, season 2 was originally a lot more like season 1, with the sort of character centric episodes, and it was going to be more serialized, but not quite as serialized. There's a ton of episodes in there that we had kind of soft broken that are never going to see the light of day in this iteration of the show, at least. You never know. Never say never.
HBO, please call us.
Yeah, HBO. Yes. Yeah, please. HBO. Make Geek by Night.
Specifically HBO.
HBO. It'll be your new Sunday night must-watch show. There's the episode that we really wanted to do that was about Gwen going to her high school reunion, her 10-year high school reunion, and running into her ex-boyfriend before she was out of the closet. He was the last guy that she dated.
He was the last man.
Yeah. Yeah, he was the first last man. And I remember that. Because we called it was it Saved by the Gwen or
Yes.
For Whom the Gwen Tolls or something? It was
Nick had like 5 titles.
Yeah,
that he just, like, rapid fire.
yeah. It was. They were all Bell puns, if I remember correctly. But yeah, that was definitely one. Do you remember any of the other ones?
The one where Simon has clone brothers named Alvin and Theodore.
Yeah. Well, no, not Alvin and Theodore. So his brothers were going to be named Vin and Theo, and that was the joke.
Oh, sure.
Because that's why his dad's name is David, because that Dave is the Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Wow.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's the only thing that survives from that.
Yeah. But that was definitely going to be a thing. And then you were going to learn that they were all clones. And they were all having very different personalities. Because Theo was the original character we had pinned for Billy McCartney. And then Vin was going to be like a big, like, macho guy. And so it was just going to be like 3 totally different, like, personalities, 3 totally different brothers. But yeah, we'd always talked about that one. Originally David was going to be a lot more Walt Disney-esque and was going to be building a theme park, because that was another part. That was another version of like the live action, like the game in the real world was going to be. And that was like the original season 2 premiere, I think, that we totally wrote. Like, we wrote the whole thing, did a table read of it, and then abandoned it when we realized we needed to reset and try something else. Right?
I don't think we got that far, but I think we definitely, I feel like you like outlined it and then we started writing it, and then
I
we were
have
like,
the scripts.
Oh,
On
well,
my
never mind.
computer. Yeah. I think, you know what I think it was? I think that it was one that Nick and I wrote, because it was before we were writing every episode with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that definitely happened. But yeah, I think that's it. I don't know. We'll have to ask Nick when he's on the show next time.
For sure. So, Jay, looking back on your time involved with this show, this decade of being Victor Conrad, what is one of your or some of your fondest Geek by Night memories, whether it's in an episode or behind the scenes?
I really enjoyed honestly, every episode I was in was a treat, because it's I looked at my entire time on Geek by Night as a gift, because it was something that I always felt like I was sitting at the cool kids table, and I didn't quite feel like I deserved to be there, because everyone was so ridiculously talented and so just unbelievably encouraging and compassionate. Like, it's so rare to find a team of people that are like-minded and just driven towards the same goal, even if we don't necessarily have the same way to get there. There's, everyone was there to do the same thing, and we were all there to make the best and tell the best story we could, whether it was writing or production or acting. Everyone was unified in that regard, and it was an absolute treat to be a part of. But my favorite moment from Geek by Night, there's one that I like more, but I can't talk about that because it's in the finale. But our very first table read that we did for the show, I still remember when Naomi and I were talking back and forth, and like I was talking to her, and we were in character, and we were doing our roles for that first table read, and I felt that electricity going up and down my spine, and I was like, oh god damn, this is the good stuff. This is so good. Because she's brilliant. She's an absolute dynamo.
Truly.
And just so lucky to be able to work with her, and it was so cool to just effortlessly fall into character. Like, I got the directions, like, this is who he is, and to be able to bounce that off of her kind of just controlled chaos was just amazing, and just such a privilege to be a part of.
Mark, do you have any favorite memories of working on the show over the past 9+ years?
I have a few, actually. A lot of fond memories with this project. Some of the standout ones are, honestly, just hearing the episode. I don't remember which episode it is, But when the Ire is talking with Gibson in the alleyway, and he's in the middle of his monologue, and the phone rings for the first time, and just hearing that moment play out, and just hearing how real it's edited and put together so that it just really just sounds like the winds are just taken right out of his sails. One of the rare moments when I've been able to laugh at something I did, because it just came together so beautifully, and so that moment always stands out for me. Also, just like the entirety of the Making It Weird episode.
Yes,
it's just such a fun episode, and it really does get weird, but like in the best ways. It's something that, and this is not by any means an admission of anything for anybody, but if Geek by Night were to be able to be made into a show, like an animated show or even a live action series, that would be the episode that everyone would be looking forward to, because it has that same level as like the musical Buffy episode or the Puppet Angel episode or something like that. It's so out there, but it's so fun, and it's a great opportunity to just like remember that, like, even in the apocalypse, sometimes things are just funny, And outside of those, honestly, all the table reads that we've done, it's a lot of what I do is just in a booth by myself. So it's always great to be able to, even in a cold read environment, be able to work with the energy of other actors. But it really has made this experience so rewarding, because that means that you then get to go into that recording session by yourself, kind of with everybody's voices in your head already. The way they say the line specifically might change. Whatever selects are being taken for the final product might change, but it gives you something to work off of when you're doing your own performance. I think every time I play the Ire, I can just hear Gibson's voice in the back of my head as being like the annoying guy on the other side of the headset that I'm yelling at. So that's been like really useful as an actor, just to like have that like going on in the back all the time to kind of help amp up the Ire's own aggression, and he's always just yelling about everything, and that's why he's got a little Gibson in the back of his head. But it's so great to just get everyone together and be able to just kind of you feel like you're creating together. It really is a collaborative process at that point, and it feels like it, rather than just being in a booth by yourself and hoping the lines sound good when they go off.
So, Cass, of course, you co-wrote the series finale with Scott and Nick, but your work on the production of this episode was kind of your final responsibility in the series. You are wrapped. So, what are your thoughts on your time working on the show, and how does it feel to really reach the end here?
It's still, like, I've said goodbye to this show several times now, like, because like finishing the script and doing the table read and like just sending the score notes to Tofty, but it still doesn't like feel real, really, because it's been like, I don't know, I guess like pretty much a decade of my life, and I am like, I don't know who I would be as a person without Geek by Night. So it's a relief in the sense that like this is a story, like the chapter's closing, like this is a thing that's like I'm done with. But it's sad. I don't know. This is a lot of like mixed emotions that I've like slowly been processing over the past like year, as we work on this. But yeah, I don't know. I'm like Jay said, I'm like grateful to be involved in this. And it's definitely like, I've definitely like grown as a writer and like a creative and a person, just through working on this. So I'm like trying not to cry.
So before we get to shout outs, I want to kind of build some of the excitement for the series finale coming up. That will be our next episode to air. So I want to ask you, Scott and Cass, strategically, What can you tease about the series finale, Heroes by Day?
Scott, do you want to go first? Or?
Yeah. Let's see, man. I will. I guess. Well, it's long.
Yes.
That's good.
That is very
Yeah.
true.
There's a lot more Geek By Night left.
yeah, it's long. Here's what I'll say. There is a scene, a single scene in the next in the next episode that is longer than, I would say, like somewhere in the ballpark of like longer than about 12 of the episodes that exist of Geek by Night. And it is one scene. It took me 6 weeks to do.
That's so rad.
Yeah. So that's something that I can tease. So there you go.
Let's see. I will say that there is a monologue in the finale that when I was working on it, I cried a lot. So there's that too.
Yeah. And I will just say that like Geek by Night in many ways, and this was always intentional. It ends the way that it started, in so much as like where our focus is, I guess. So as much as there is going to be tons of just blockbuster superhero action, there's also plenty of space given to these characters that I think we've all fallen for, and I think give them an ending that is befitting of them. So yeah, we were not afraid to slow it down. In fact, I kind of made it a demand.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I would have been upset if we hadn't slowed it down.
Yeah. I know. I would have too. So yeah, there you go.
Can't wait. So something I like to do at the end of each after show is go around the circle and ask everybody to give a shout out to somebody's contribution to this episode who isn't in the room with us right now. So if anybody has a shout out to anybody in playing the game, we'd love to hear it.
Well, I would like to give a shout out to my good friend Natalie Van Sistine for setting herself up for life. $1,800 a week, right? That's
definitely
pretty good. No, but I love her character, and I love the sass that she brings to the table every single time she opens her mouth. And the whole show, we've had lots of personalities that run the gamut of like, hey, nice to meet you, I'm a person, to I'm definitely a caricature, but you've met this person, and boy, isn't it great that we get to experience this together. It's phenomenal to hear it all come together. And yeah, Natalie and I have known each other for almost 2 decades. Twice as long as I've been a part of Geek by Night. So
Wow.
So it's neat that we're able to do it together, and yeah.
I wish we had more opportunities to put those two characters in a room together.
Oh my God.
Especially alone, I can't even imagine what that conversation would
I don't
be
know
like.
who would survive.
Yeah, truly. Jay, you got somebody?
I mean, I want to say the whole cast. Because it's just it's hard to just single out one person. Because it's an incredible episode, top to bottom. I'll say Tofty though. I'll say Tofty. Just unbelievable. You know, the fact that the music we had throughout the entirety of the series was as good as it was is unbelievable, and he's just a singular talent, and it's there's so many emotional moments that are brought up by his skill that we're spoiled. You know, we have the riches because of him. So
Tofty is actually like a genius. I don't know, like he's
Always.
I
So good.
I've been so impressed with his score this season. It surprises me every time. Like, because, you know, we'll go over the last thing you do as a director is you like we'll go over the scenes and be like, this is the kind of vibe we want from the music, and then like we send the spreadsheet to Tofty and he does his music wizardry and it turns out like amazing. So I love all the new music that we get in this episode and in the season in general. I wanted to shout out Nick's performance as Billy. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this before, but getting Nick's lines where he's just an evil bastard and like compare it to like my friend Nick, you know, it's like I think it's a testament to his talent and how much fun he has with Billy.
You can tell.
Oh yeah, he dives into that character, and I hate Billy so much. I hate him so much.
And then I just want to shout out the Joel and Charlie scene. I think Rachel and Zach are just really great in that one. So I love listening to it every time it comes up, and I just love Joel's reaction of like, I can't tell anybody, but that's amazing.
You fought pirates?
I also want to shout out all of our like our sort of like supporting cast in that final the big scene where like all the people are getting their powers for the first time and are like freaking out. I just thought we got some really good people, and that's a testament to them and showing up and recording their lines with absolutely no context for like what this show is or why they're doing this. And also of course to Chelsea, who just knocks it out of the park with the casting on all of those roles. And there's just so many of them, and there's more to come in our next and final episode. And I'm really excited to talk about those people that are new to the next episode. But they're always so good, and I think they were great there. And Chelsea just regularly knocks it out of the park. So yeah, our supporting cast and Chelsea. So a twofer.
All right. Any last thoughts on playing the game?
You aren't ready for what's next. You're not. It's playing the game
You are right.
Was a ridiculously fun episode to do. And it's just a setup for the next one, because there's so many emotional beats in the next episode. It's unbelievable. Like, just, it's fantastic.
I am also not ready for the next episode. I am still currently editing it.
I'm proud of how playing the game turned out. So
it's really great.
I am too.
Yay.
I just want to give a shout out to, since we're dealing with a sort of D&D type experience in this episode, shout out to the Unexpectables. I am a main cast member of the show. We're coming up on 2 years now of campaign 2 of our show. So, hey, Wednesday nights, if you've got nothing to do and you want to listen to some geeks at night play some D&D, check out the Unexpectables on Twitch. We're live every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. That's really it.
All right. I want to say thank you to all of my guests today, Scott, Cass, Mark, Jay, for joining me, and thank you to all of you, the fans, the underdogs, for listening. If you'd like to support the show, please join the Dueling Genre Patreon at duelinggenre.com/support. You can also tell your friends, families, and followers to subscribe to Geek by Night on wherever you're listening to this right now. Thank you for going beyond Geek by Night with us. Stay tuned for the series finale of Geek by Night, episode 44, Heroes by Day. And we'll be right back here after the episode discussing what happens. See you all then. Have a super day.